And that makes it really empty. What Turnitin gives you is, on its face, a Dropbox, so it's an alternative to Angel's own Dropbox. The big advantage, the big obvious advantage to using Turnitin as opposed to the built-in Dropbox is that with the built-in Dropbox, you not only have the stage where the student has to upload their paper, but then you have to download the paper. You have to do whatever you're going to do with the paper, upload it again, attach it. They have to download, there's a lot of uploading and downloading. It's very cumbersome, and if you're not sitting in one place to do all of it, you have to so say you download a paper and you get halfway done grading it. You can't upload it back up to use Angel to store it again. You could, but that would be awkward because you'd have to find a place to put it. And so that's a real pain. So the obvious right up front thing that Turnitin provides is a method for grading the papers which is as online as the rest of online teaching. Now obviously Angel isn't only used for purely online classes. What this does also is give you online features to use with entirely face-to-face classes, with hybrid classes. So you have the option of eliminating paper altogether, even in a face-to-face class, and having all the advantages of online management of your data wherever you're going, however you're teaching. So Turnitin also provides some other features, and that's further what we'll be talking about. To get started, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm ignoring. So benefits. This is a more engaging and interesting, I think, process for the students to be involved in, as well as saving the instructor's time. And any time that you can get sort of the mechanical processes out of the way and just be dealing with the learning, you're ahead of the game. So hopefully that's what Turnitin can provide. These are some of the parts, and the part that I've described already, the online grading, that's the grade mark piece. There are two other pieces that we'll also be looking at, which is the originality check and peer mark. Originality check is plagiarism protection system where the papers that have been turned in are compared to vast numbers of other pieces of writing just to pick out. And it's done statistically. You still have to go in and actually read what the student wrote and work out the value of it, but it allows you to do comparisons that really you couldn't do on your own. And then peer mark is a system for students evaluating each other's writing. So we're going to be looking at setting up an assignment and the originality check and the basics of what Turnitin allows you to do as far as grading. I've got here the steps just to get started setting up to getting to the point where you'd be adding a Turnitin Dropbox. Some of it's sort of straightforward. You have to log into Angel to do it. There is a whole other side of Turnitin that you can use without a particular LMS. Turnitin has its own website, and you can use it that way, but then you lose the integration between Turnitin and Angel that we have worked out as a Turnitin customer on campus. So by going through Angel, Turnitin already knows about your classes, who you are, who your students are, and all of that is tied in together without you having to set it up. So we start by logging into Angel. You enter a particular section or a source course, navigate to the desired folder, and click Add Content like anything else. But there's an option for a Turnitin Dropbox.
So that's there for every class,
That is there for every class.
regardless of what anyone uses.
Exactly. So I have already come to the folder that I want to add the Dropbox to. Here's the add content link. And Turnitin Dropbox is the last item, just because they're in alphabetic order. And when you click that, all of a sudden you start getting stuff that has a little bit different look, but it's still inside Angel, but it has its own graphics and its own sort of interface style. And this is worth paying attention to because there are going to be differences. Since this is a content type that's provided by a somewhat external service, there's integration, but it's not perfect. It's amazing, it's magical, but not perfect. So the first step is this screen where you select your assignment type. And there are 3 types, but when you're just getting started, only the first type really matters because the other 2 types depend on the first type. So paper assignment sounds pretty generic. It is. This is just any sort of paper that you're going to have your students write. The other 2 types, there's a peer mark assignment, which can be an assignment for students to evaluate each other's work that is based on an existing paper assignment. And then the last option is a revision assignment, and that allows students to turn in multiple drafts of a paper, but it also is based on an existing paper assignment. And that partly is to get around a limitation. A standard paper assignment, students can make multiple submissions, but each one overwrites the previous one. So if part of the assignment involves having the distinct drafts, you have to start with a paper assignment and then make a revision assignment that depends on it. So I'll choose paper since I'm getting started. And this gives you a relatively simple looking set of settings to set up. There's a title, and a point value, and 3 dates. The dates are similar to dates that you'd run across for content items in Angel, but not exactly the same. So the start date is the point after which students can start making submissions. They'll be able to see the Dropbox when they go to the appropriate folder before that. It'll just sit there. But until the point of time that you've designated here arrives, they can't make submissions to it. Then the due date is the point at which either they won't be able to make any more submissions, or they can continue to make submissions, but they'll be marked late. And you have that option per assignment to decide what you're going to allow as far as that goes. Then the last date is the post date, and that's the point of time past which students can access the results basically of their work. So any marking that you've done of the paper after they turned it in, their originality report if you decide to show that to them, things like that. It doesn't, whoops. It doesn't tightly control what happens to the grades in the Angel gradebook. So you could arrange this so that the post date is relatively late, but students can see just their grades, that part of the information, right away. But that would just be a matter of coordinating, how those settings are set. So that's what this note is. It says the post date relates only to the availability of grade marked papers and has no bearing on what grades are posted. So that's part of the integration that's magic. When I'm done with this, and I'll show you, you create the Dropbox. Turnitin creates the column in the gradebook for you on the Angel side. And the grades, when you grade a paper in Turnitin, the grades go into the gradebook. That all happens automatically. So that means this post date won't stop a student from seeing what their grade was before this date. What it will stop them from doing is being able to see the copy of the paper with all of your marks on it. So if it's important that they not be able to see that until later for some reason. Then there's this panel here that says more options. So I said this was a simple appearing dialog box, and you could, at this point, just click submit and you'd have the Dropbox and be ready to go. But there's a lot more under it, under more options. You can add instructions to go with the paper, and that's particularly useful in an online class because otherwise the students may have no idea what the assignment is. That's where this would go. Then there are settings to do with the originality report. The first question, do you want to generate one at all? And you have the option of yes or no. So if you are not concerned about the plagiarism aspect at all, you might set this to no because you're not interested. You also have the option to control how the reports are generated. And your options are, you can choose immediately, and the first report is final. So the student makes a submission, the originality report is generated right away, and that's it. That's the first option. The second option is also immediate, but every time they make a new submission, which overwrites their original submission, they get a new originality report. The one caveat there is that there's a delay after the first one, and I think it's like 24 hours. So depending on how tight your schedule is, if you're allowing multiple submissions, students could run out of time, or you could run out of time to get the originality reports. And then the last one is to generate the report on the due date. And that would probably make most sense if you allow multiple submissions. It would just wait until the point at which the paper's late or blocked from further submissions. Then you have choices of things you can exclude from the similarity index, which is part of when it compares to the things in its different repositories. You can exclude bibliographic materials, you can exclude quoted material, you can even exclude small matches. So all that is a way of fine-tuning what parts of the paper the originality check is actually going to compare.
In other words, this program is sophisticated enough that if the student's paraphrasing a passage and there's a parenthetical citation after it, Turnitin is smart enough to know that that's not part of the originality report.
Will it do inline citation?
I don't know that it does inline. It does the works cited at the end.
How can it know
Yeah.
Yeah.
one way or another what's fair and what's not fair if it doesn't understand?
Yeah,
It doesn't understand quotation marks? Or
quotation marks.
It understands quotation marks.
But
Yeah.
it would not understand paraphrase?
No.
Or summarization?
Right.
And
But
be able to pick up like, so-and-so says in blah, blah, blah. We wouldn't get that either.
well, and in a way, it's deliberately not wanting to pick up on it because
Wait,
if the paraphrase is too close, it's effectively an unattributed quote.
right.
So,
What-
or it's partly attributed. It's just
yeah,
not.
it's the name and the source.
Yeah. But if it's a quote, it really should be a quote.
As
It's a
opposed-
tool, and so you should never just take the originality report at face value anyway.
Yeah.
That's what the human is for, to go and look at, oh no, that one's fine, or, yes, that one really is too close, or,
Which is a really important point. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how smart this machine
It's a machine, so you have some idea how smart it is
So
if you've worked with
in
machines.
fact, it could actually clutter,
Yes,
and so you can turn the whole thing off.
yes.
Because I can pick up plagiarism immediately. I don't really need the program.
Yeah, no, you can turn that part completely off.
I'm going to throw you for a loop here, maybe.
Oh, good.
Is this only available for English?
No. Every class,
I teach Spanish, and one of the things I'm dealing with right now is material that essentially they've gone to a website, picked out what they want to use Google Translator, and called it good.
okay. I thought
And
you
so
meant,
I'm here to really kind of see what can this do for me,
right.
but also where I need a review. Where are those fine lines of plagiarism and copyright?
Yeah, I thought you meant English as opposed to biology.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean language.
It works in different languages.
It does.
Yes,
How do I
it
set that? How do I set that up?
Yeah. Well,
To some degree, it is set up. As far as the plagiarism checking, I'm not sure what the limitations are, whether it goes through translations. I mean, that's pretty deep. So, yeah, I would guess that would be a way somebody could get around it. But I mean, to the extent that materials in other languages are part of the repository that it checks, there's going to be some tendency for, especially stuff that's been translated by a machine, I think would be more likely to show up as an original, because it's more likely to be a very sort of boilerplate-ish production. So it might do you some good, even with stuff that people have acquired by translation rather than composing. And of course, if the translation's not very good, I mean, you can probably spot that just by looking at it.
I can spot it just by looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're using tenses I haven't taught, it's very simple. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
it's like, what can this do for me as a tool? And then other issues associated.
Yeah.
Because if they were to present that kind of material in English in a different course, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't just say, here's my information, and
Right.
like go verbatim, this is your. So just because they translated it for my class, they're calling it done, assignment done.
Yeah.
Presentation done. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
There's no original thought.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole point.
Right. Well, yeah, the guts and back is doing statistical matching to words as written. So it doesn't, as far as I know, actually speak any languages. So, yeah, the originality that it's arriving at is just in terms of series of particular words and characters. So, I would guess that some of that would show up, but maybe not as much as stuff that was all in one language. Okay, so the last option to do with that is whether or not you want the students to see the originality report at all. You can say yes or no. And then there's this big yellow block here to do with a new feature, which is a built-in grammar checking piece. Again, that's going to be machine grammar based on various things. And if you feel like doing Turnitin the favor of testing this for them, then that's probably the best reason to choose to do it. Mostly, all of this is being done by software, but this being a beta would be even less reliable a guide at this point. In theory, they'll make it better. Here's the option for allowing submissions after the due date. And if you do allow them, that means the students can continue to make submissions. They'll be, the date that they turned it in will show up in red on your list of submissions. So you can tell right away, without having to remember what the due date was, that that submission was late. And if the assignment allows multiple submissions and a student already made a submission before the due date, they can't continue to make submissions and have them turn in late. Their last submission before the due date is their last submission. And then the last section has to do with your choice of what to do with the papers that are submitted to you, as far as whether they get added to Turnitin's collection of papers to compare to. And this is particularly useful if you are looking to catch students plagiarizing from each other, as opposed to going out on the internet and finding it in whatever. But you have options to control whether what you're submitted gets added to the student paper repository. I don't know, this has to do with what it's comparing to, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, what this is doing is whether you're just comparing to other student papers, whether you're comparing to material that's just been found out on the internet, or whether it's being compared specifically to periodicals and such. And then the last option lets you choose to use all of these settings as the default for any future Dropboxes that you set up, so that maybe you have a standard template that you use most often. You could set it once and then not have to go through and set it again. So I'm going to go ahead and click Submit. And that's what you get. Now this is a content item like other content items in Angel, so you hover over it, you get these links that let you go to different places. These behave a little bit differently than standard content items. And the main difference is, so here if I click on really important paper, this takes me into the Turnitin interface, which is similar to what you'd get if you went through their website, but you'd have to find it. And so this shows student submissions, and I could edit the assignment settings, look at various things here. One thing that's worth noting about this is there's integration between Turnitin and Angel in this regard, and not in many regards, but it's not, you don't get a complete list of all of the students in the section here. What shows up by naturally is as students make submissions, they show up on the list with their submissions. So that could potentially be a little confusing. You might wonder where students are. You might totally forget about some of them. There's a link here that says roster sync, and that will synchronize this list with your roster in the particular section in Angel, so that you'll then have an entry here, and I can go ahead and do that. I don't know who's in here as a student. Ah, very good. So after you do that, then you'll have a current, this will reflect your current roster, and if a student hasn't made a submission, it'll say no submission. That synchronization works both positively and negatively. If a student drops out of the class and you do a roster sync, they will go away, even if they've made submissions. The papers are still there and back somewhere, but you can't get at them unless they get added back into the course and you do another sync. So it's a powerful feature. Yes?
How do the students go in there and submit stuff?
The students see that rather differently. Sure. And now we'll see if my dates are such that it'll actually allow anything. Huh. So they see the assignment. If there were special instructions, they'd show up here. And this button takes them to an interface that lets them upload the file. And there's a broad range of files that will accept it, lists the types there. So Microsoft Word, but also WordPerfect, PDF, HTML, RTF, just plain text, even a PostScript file if somebody manages to produce one of those.
But they're still uploading attachments. Just like
To get started,
traditional
yes,
boxes.
right.
Okay.
And in fact, what this lacks, the Angel Dropbox has a box that somebody could, if they wanted to, actually type their paper into the little box right in place. And this doesn't allow for that. So it has to be created, the paper has to be created outside somehow. And
Go to the lessons folder, find the icon. So it's basically the same for them, it's just a slightly different icon that they're seeing.
Right. And I know there's lots of different formats there. I would strongly recommend sticking with the ones that are closer to plainer text and encouraging your students just to give you text, because in order for a lot of Turnitin to work, it really has to be able to read the text. If you upload a PDF file that hasn't had optical character recognition done to it, it really is just a picture that looks like text. And yeah, it won't have anything to read. So,
That's the way to work around the system.
right. This is a totally original paper.
Turnitin should get rid of that option of PDF.
Well, yeah. But you can't, I mean, PDFs can have the actual text embedded in it, and in which case it works fine. But yeah, it's not, it's a funny.
A PowerPoint as far as they're getting the text submitted to me? Because, you know, would you recommend the student like copy and paste to a Word document, or what would be the easiest thing that you would recommend?
Well, that would be easiest for you if they got that done.
Right.
There is an option, which is, this is something that's available to the traditional Dropbox. You could make submissions on a student's behalf. And that can be entire files, or there's a way that you can just paste a certain amount of text in and submit it as the assignment. So you have that option, the students don't. I don't think. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a way in a desperate situation where you really want to help a student out and they've managed to get you the material, but it's not in this format. If you are in a position to go to the trouble of getting the text out somehow or other, you can either put it in its own file or just paste it into the box.
And there is no easy way to do that from the PowerPoint, is there? Because I know when you print, it gives you the option to do outline only.
Right.
But you can't just highlight that and then copy paste it into a Word document, can you?
Actually, you can.
Do that?
Yeah. That I'd have to actually walk through it with you because I don't remember. I know it can be done, but I don't remember exactly how it works.
To do that, and I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is possible.
Ultimately, anything with text is possible. That's true. Sometimes it's more steps than others. Okay, so we've done that, and we looked at that. Okay, the last thing that I have to say, and then I'll turn it over to Jessica, is there are some special considerations to do partly with our integration with Angel. The first one is that the integration with the gradebook happens automatically. Like I said earlier, it's magic, but it's not perfect. So as soon as you create a Dropbox, it creates a column for you in your gradebook with the same name. And when you grade things and turn it in, the grades go into the gradebook in Angel, and everything is wonderful. If that relationship gets damaged, With normal content items in Angel, you can kind of go in and poke them back together until they work again. When it gets damaged in this case, sometimes it's enough that you basically have to start over, which in the middle of the class is not really an option. So then you wind up having to put the grades in manually for that assignment, for the duration. But it doesn't happen a lot, obviously, or nobody would use this, but it does happen now and then. The big sort of weird one is let's see. So normally you go to a content item and you click on settings and you get something like this. We have a content tab and access and so on. But with Turnitin Dropboxes, you go back here, which is a way to change the settings that you set when you set it up in the first place, which is fine, but that means that there are things on all those other tabs that aren't here. And one of the main ones that people very quickly miss is the Access tab, which in the case of Turnitin Dropbox is under the Utilities link. So if you go to Utilities, there's this link here that says Configure Access Settings, and this is basically what you'd have on the Access tab, including the start and end dates for being able to see that the thing exists at all, putting a password on it, and so on. You can control the availability of a Turnitin Dropbox to one team, but you can't do it to more than one team. You only do it to one team or everybody, which means that there's no way to override settings for specific students based on teams for a Turnitin Dropbox. You just have to have separate Dropboxes if that really comes into play. Also, since there's no assignment tab, because the integration with the gradebook is so magical and automatic, there's no way to set a milestone for these. So if you use milestones, you can't for these. But otherwise, mostly you can do everything that you'd need. And the last really important one is that we have a problem in the integration that when you copy a whole course from one section to another or from semester to semester, there's a chance, at least, maybe a good chance, maybe a great chance, I haven't done a survey, that the Turnitin Dropboxes will break. And when that happens, you have to delete them and recreate them. So, are there any questions about any of that? Okay, good. Then I will pass the baton. And the microphone.
So I'm going to talk about what you do after students start turning in papers, some of the things you can do with originality check and grade mark, and just some basic features to at least get you started. There's a ton you can do with Turnitin. Once you get into it, it's just kind of getting everything set up and getting familiar with all the resources. So I wanted to talk about, just kind of reiterate what Saul just mentioned about what Turnitin compares student papers to, and then I'm going to show you a report. I have a fake paper, and I'll show you kind of what shows up and talk about all the different options. So Turnitin looks at, and these are the options you can set up when you're setting up your paper. It looks at the current and archived web, So for example, it looks at Wikipedia today and Wikipedia from months ago. So it comes up. So it looks at 14 billion different web pages. It looks at student papers, and they found a lot of plagiarism comes from students copying other students' work. So there's 150 million student papers in the database right now. It doesn't just compare them to student papers here. It compares them to any student paper that's been turned in from basically any college, university, high school that's using Turnitin. And then they also have content partnerships. So they use, they look at the things that are in library databases like journal articles, magazine articles, and so on. So I'm going to go into a report and log into my class. So I've set up a fake paper. And this is what you'll see. After students start turning in their papers, you'll get the student's name, the title they gave their paper, your similarity report. Usually you don't want to see an 84% here. That's not the greatest score. That's how many things, basically 84% of that paper was used other sources. It doesn't mean that it's all bad. It just means that 84% of the paper is coming from other sources. So what you'll do as a instructor is you'll click on this 84% to look at what it found. And what I did to create this paper, I went to Wikipedia, and I also went to an online journal, is what I did. I just completely copy and pasted because I wanted to show you what happens. What I tell students to do is, because Turnitin doesn't get rid of the quoted material or things that are cited correctly. It can't tell if it's cited correctly or not. What it does is it just says, this is copied from somewhere else. I'm going to put it in a color. This is something you need to look at. So I tell students, when I'm working with students on this, I say, look at the things in bright colors. Did you cite at the end? If you did and it's in quotes, it's fine. If you didn't, that's a problem. Maybe you forgot to paraphrase. Maybe, something's wrong. You need to fix it. So as an instructor, you can tell very quickly where the problems are in the paper. You don't have to question it anymore, spend any time wondering what happened. I mean, if sometimes you look at a paper, you just know something's wrong. You don't know what. This saves you some time with that. What you can do then is you can find out where it came from. First one is saying it comes from purecrazy.com, but if you click on this arrow, it's going to give you more information. So everyone copies from Wikipedia and puts it on their own websites because it's free. So I actually copied this from Wikipedia, but everyone else copied from Wikipedia as well. As you can see, that 74%, everyone else copied from Wikipedia. The interesting part is you can see how many students are submitting Wikipedia articles to Turnitin. You can't see the full student paper, you won't get that, but you'll see that there were 4 papers that used the same exact text and submitted it to Colorado Technical University Online. There's one paper from Santa Barbara City College, and it just goes on and on. So it is looking at those 150 million student papers in the database as well as the internet, and it's going to show you everything that matches. You can expand to full text, you can go right to the website, so if you want more information, you can go directly to the actual website and look at it and everything. I'm going to click on the back arrow. This I copied and pasted from an online journal. This is actually where I got it from, so that one's correct. And this would, of course, take me right to the website so I could take a look at that. But that's basically what I do with the originality reports. They're not perfect, so don't rely on the percentage as how you're going to grade the paper. Actually look at the reports because they'll miss things too. They don't catch everything, or they might kind of overcatch things as well, because they do catch those things in quotes that students have actually cited correctly. They're catching the works cited, which students, your reference page they're going to catch that, and that's really shouldn't be included as part of the percentage. But the defaults on when you're setting up a paper is that all quoted material is included, all cited, all works cited lists are included. So, and you can change that. I usually leave everything in there because when I'm teaching classes, I want to see everything. I want to know what's happened with it and everything. So that's what I do with that. But all these reports will come up for every student. You can actually just arrow through and go from paper to paper. You don't have to even go in and out of a session. You can go through every paper. I can go right from here to GradeMark and start grading my papers online. And students will be just able to see all the marks you've put on, all the comments you've put into the paper, everything after that post date that you've set up. They'll be able to see the grades sooner in Angel because Angel and Turnitin are connected, but they'll be able to see the markings and everything you've put in there later. Making sure. So there's really 3 main parts to online grading. There's a grammar feedback, which Saul mentioned, and that's in beta. I went ahead and applied it to my assignment just so you can see what it looks like and what happens, and you can determine whether or not to use it. Using marks and comments, those comments you put on papers all the time. You mentioned comma splice. You can put those into Turnitin, just click and drag it over and not have to type it out every single time. I'm going to show you how to do that. Yeah, and you can also type in full comments if you want. You can also set up rubrics. So if you want to attach a rubric to your assignment and have that help you with grading, that's really easy to do too. So we're going to talk about the grammar feedback first. And that allows you to do instant marks and has instructor controls. Let's see. So get here. I'm going to click on GradeMark and wait for this to load up. It takes a little bit to do the ETS data, which is that grammar data. But the grammar data shows up in purple. And you can keep this, you can delete it, you can do whatever you want. So what this is telling me is that I have a missing comma and that I may need to place a comma after this word. That might make sense in the paper. It might not. It's in beta. So what you can do, if you don't like the comment, you can click on dismiss. It disappears. The student never sees it. You can add more information if you want to tell the student something more. They also have handbooks. So if you're teaching a class where you think students are having trouble grasping the language and, figuring out correct grammar, there's handbooks online that students can access to get more information about what a missing comma means and why you need to have commas in certain places. It is set for the high school setting right now. I haven't looked at how to change that yet, but you can go to advanced, you can go to English learners, and it'll give you all this information about how, what grammar, what to do with grammar, why certain things are the way they are, and everything. So it can be another resource, basically, for students. But with any of these, you've used passive voice in the sentence. I can say, well, no, they were okay with this. I'm going to click on dismiss, and it disappears. So then the students won't see it. So my suggestion, if you're using this, is go through and deal with the purple boxes first before you go on to the comments, and just kind of deal with one thing at a time. So adding comments and marks. What Turnitin has done is they've set up comments that are commonly used and commonly added by professors to papers. So C/S is comma splice, and you can drag it right to the problem and say, the student should have put it there. It's going to set it there for me, and when the student runs their mouse over it, it's going to explain what a comma splice is. So the student will know why you put that mark there and what's going on. And you can also add more information, just, type text in the box, read the above. And click on save. And so now what will happen is the student will mouse over it, and they'll get all the information about comma splicing plus things that you've told them, additional help you've provided them. Maybe you could tell them, you know, see me later.
The student gets the paper back. Since I teach English,
Right.
of course I'm making all of these kinds of marginal comments as well as comments, you know, in the end. Are they going to see like this rainbow of all these different colors all over the text, or is it over to the side? I mean,
You can do a mix.
can I?
Yeah, you can.
So it's all over to the side, so the paper itself looks clean.
Good question.
Or do they really end up literally saying, my lord, all of this stuff is quoted. All of these purple things are all these kinds of errors, which are not, of course, exactly on the word.
Right.
I mean, it looks to me from this perspective, like this has got awful. As a student, I would be sweating, I'd feel horrible, I'd
Right.
be like, you know, shaky.
Yeah.
At least separate the originality from the marks.
Right. It does, and we'll look at it from the student side too.
Okay, so
we'll
what
mark it.
I'm looking at is not the student's view.
This is the instructor view, but I think the student's view looks pretty similar to this. But we'll look at it just to see, because we, yeah.
Writing anxiety will just shoot way up if they're staring at
Right.
hundreds of different kinds of colors, and then they see their grade,
Right.
and there's no hope.
Right.
They're not going to want to surf over to see, you know, all of the different comments underneath the colors.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Some things that would make this better, if the papers were double spaced, would probably look a little bit better. This is single spaced, so this is looking messier to start out with. Maybe not using the grammar check portion, since that's adding in a whole another color and problems and everything.
But I do have to grade grammar.
Okay. Well, and you could grade grammar on your own and just use the blue boxes instead of using the purple boxes.
Okay.
So,
That's sounding a little better.
okay, so I turned on the grammar check just to show you what it looked like, but you could grade grammar on your own and just use the things in that box or your own comments of, you know, comma splicing or, you know, missing quotes, big, those sorts of weak transition, all those sorts of things. To add in your own comments, you can, you know, if you're saying, you know, this sentence, I'm not sure about this sentence, you can highlight it, click on comment, and you can type in whatever comments that you want, you know.
So it works similarly to the insert.
Right. So we need to talk about this. Click on save, and then they'll get a little box to the side. Cancel on that. So, but we'll look at the student side of things as well. I believe it works in Spanish as well. I haven't used it.
Automatic grammar wouldn't, because that would be the.
Well, yeah, that's just in beta right now.
By hand, as long as what you're doing is I mean,
Because the features sound really awesome,
Mhm.
you know, to correct the grammar.
Right.
But if it's being submitted in another language,
Right.
like Spanish, I was wondering if that there's a switch button for Turnitin to
Look at Spanish grammar.
Spanish.
Yeah, we'll look at that, because I'm not sure off the top of my head right now, but we'll look into that and everything. If you have other comments you use quite a bit, you can add your own comments that you use and kind of create your own library of comments, so you're not typing everything every time.
What little command helps you with that?
Yeah, if you use the toolbar on the top right, and and that opens the Quick Mark Manager. And right now it's putting the commonly used ones in there. And then you can, if you remind me, do you click on the plus button? Oh, plus button to add in your own comments. So, new comment, just,
It's like the autocorrect.
so I can click on save, and then I have a new comment that I've added. So you can add your own comments if you have ones that you know that you use quite a bit. That's true. That's true. You could do comments that way. Right. And rather than writing them every single time, you could just drag them over or highlight things or things like that. Another thing you can do is set up a rubric. And I just want to show you where that is because we're running out of time, I know. So to set up a rubric, when you're in the grade mark section of your paper, there's these little boxes at the bottom, and that's where you can attach a rubric to your paper. This is also where you can set up a rubric for your paper. So you would just click on that. I've set up a rubric already, and I've typed in everything of what these mean, given them scores and so on. Basically, you just click on the boxes, it adds them up for you, gives a score to the paper, is what it does. And then you can change it if you want. Once again, there's the little toolbar, the little wrench up at the top that you can click on. And you can create a rubric. You can use a rubric that you used before and turn it in. You can't copy a rubric from another source. You can't import rubrics as far as I can find. But you can create new rubrics or pull rubrics in that you've used in other Turnitin instances. But I'm just showing you where it is for right now. But after that, so I'll say apply rubric percentage to grade. So now the grade has been entered. That will show up in Angel. And let's just take a look to see what it looks from the student viewpoint. I know that looks a little bit messy, but we'll see what it looks like from the student viewpoint. So, student. Oh, I haven't. I submitted a paper as the instructor, not as the student, and that's why I can't see the paper. Because it's
You're in the correct Dropbox.
right, I'm in the correct one. It's the test one. So I actually can't view this. Yeah. I didn't go into the student view to submit the paper. I submitted it on my own behalf. So that might be an issue that comes up if you submit a student paper on your own. It won't be automatically connected to the student's account, so they won't be able to see the grading. That's a good thing to know.
You have to remember that if you're submitting on behalf of another student, to actually go through the on behalf of option rather than
right, then just to submit it.
Well, how about you share that with
Yeah, how do we do that?
well,
That's something I don't know.
so cancel the preview.
Yep, I'll cancel preview. Get into, and I'll get into my Dropbox. And if I submit paper, okay, so I did it for a non-enrolled student, but you would choose the student's name, and then it would be connected to their account. Where if you don't do it, they won't be able to see any of the grading you've done without you printing it out for them. So. Yeah. You would probably need to.
You would have that option in the Dropbox.
Right. Right.
Mostly the students would just upload their own, right?
Yeah, most. It will make your lives a lot easier
It sure
if the
would.
students upload their own papers. Having this integrated with Angel I was telling Saul, it takes away about 90% of the problems I've had in the past with using Turnitin. Because the last place I worked, Turnitin was not integrated with Angel, and it was a mess. So this solves so many of your problems. It makes your life a lot easier having it integrated with Angel. There's just a few tricks throughout, but it does overall work very well.
I I've heard a lot of instructors say too, as far as the plagiarism goes, I mean, they're very good at picking up plagiarism, like you said, on your own. But that it's a tool for the students, if you let them submit more than once, submit it first and let them see, because some of them aren't doing it because they're malicious.
Sure.
And, you know, they don't understand, what do I need to paraphrase, what do I need to quote, is this too close, this isn't really a paraphrase.
Right.
You know, and it helps them to learn.
Yeah, especially the
what they
percentage.
do, yeah.
I mean, even if everything is absolutely correctly done, if 84% of the research paper is from other sources, where's their voice?
Right.
So that being able to see
Right.
just exactly how little they're involved in their own
So
research
yeah,
is
rather
really
than
helpful.
using it as a
Yeah,
penalty, it's
Right.
a teaching
It's a
tool.
great teaching
Okay, let's
tool.
look at your drafts
Right.
and, oh, looky here.
I agree.
Right, right, definitely. Just want to put on the board some other places to get support. You can also, always, of course, call EdTech, Saul and Saul. The Turnitin website is wonderful. They have lots of videos online going through all the features of Turnitin, how it works. They have tons of handouts, but it's a really great resource.